Good evening. We have another opportunity to talk about kteino and how they were the return. The evidence shows that they were the return of the ones that were called the Father and Jesus 2,000 years ago, returned in new vehicles, as said in a number of places that I've talked about before in previous broadcasts. So I'm not going to repeat that right now because there's a lot to go over with the next verse in Revelation chapter 11. Or Revelations 11:7 actually. And that says that, "And when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them, and shall overcome them and kill them." And now I'm gonna go through word for word here, like I've done before, so that we're looking at right here, and when. Okay, so the when is from the Greek hotan. I'm not sure how to pronounce that correctly, which can mean whenever. So that would, as long as. So remember, their testimony was to be 1,260 days. That was the delivery of prophecy, which meant speaking the truth that they came to bear, which ended up being like Jesus was to Moses, like kteino were to Jesus, updates of certain things, didn't cancel anything that Jesus talked about. Just like Jesus didn't really cancel anything that Moses talked about, except he did bring updates that said that adultery was not only having, sex, unlawful sex by the next level standards with somebody while you're in wedlock with somebody else, but now it was, according to Jesus, even lusting in your mind was actually a adultery. Because adultery also means, like Doe said, not becoming an adult. And not becoming an adult is relative to an adult being a next level member who receives an adult physical body to occupy, to take over, to drive, to pilot, to be attached to, connected to use as an instrument. So when they finished their testimony, well, we'll get to that with the next word, but it's saying whenever that is, as long as soon as, implies a hypothesis or more or less uncertainty, while, till, whenever, whensoever, until they finish their testimony, after they finish their testimony. And finish is from the Greek word teleo, in no tense, thus accomplishing. So it's when they have accomplished, whenever they have accomplished performing, executing, discharging, ending their testimony, which testimony was the same word as witness, marturia, from the Greek martus, which is the evidence given. They're giving evidence, they're giving a record, they're giving a report, they're giving witness to, and it's also part of giving their lives, because it will not be received by the kingdom of God, and that witness will also, no, it will not be received by the human kingdom, except for those that are given the opportunity to receive it. And and it will involve giving their lives as well to that effort, because that's the two-edged sword, is that the cutting of the binding to the plants of our families, of our human families, cutting those binds, which many humans do prior to awakening to the next level members, older members' presence on the planet, which can take place now as well, because even after they've left, they left their record of their presence, and we can still see their presence, we can still see their faces on the videos and hear their voices on the audios and the videos, and we can also get the testimony from individuals that were with them, like myself, and there's a few others that will give some testimony to that, although they seem to be dropping away from doing that. Anyway, but you never know when one of them might come forward again to stand for Tiendo, which is part of the task that dropouts need to take if they want to resume their connection to the next level. Not saying that they won't resume their connection to the next level even after they die. Their soul or spirit, their soul might still be saved by the next level, so that they can give them another opportunity. I think that will still be the case, and that's the same case with me. I'm not saying that I'm getting anything more than being saved for an opportunity to graduate with my class, like I failed to do with in 1997. And it's the same situation as, well, in a sense, it's a similar, let me say it's a similar situation to the dropouts that were called the Luciferian fallen angels, space aliens. They dropped out of a classroom. And that classroom, I guess, was in service to the next level on a spacecraft with a next level grown physical body. So they had grown to that stage, but then T said that the bar was going to be raised because of the way they fell, so that you weren't going to be able to get into the next level to that same student level or infant level of the next level, as opposed to being an adult in the next level. Because if you're an adult in the next level, then you don't have a vehicle that can actually revert back into human behavior, I don't think. Although I may be wrong, there may be a vehicle that's, vehicles in between the kind of vehicle that the Luciferians had and the vehicle that you would get if you graduated completely from overcoming the human kingdom, which I believe the 24 elders and the 4 living beings probably did, who were the students of Tiendo, 28 of the 38. And there might have been more than that, but those are the ones that are most likely to receive adult next level bodies, because Doe said that some of the new ones would have to return to finish their overcoming. But I don't doubt that they would be given a next level grown physical body for their dedication and trust and love of Doe and T and everything they represented and taught, and to the degree of even laying down their lives, showing the next level that they identified more with their soul body than they did with that human flesh body. After all the human flesh bodies will die. I mean, even if some of the Luciferian space aliens take some of them onto a spacecraft, which there's been reports that they have, those vehicles will still die. But a next level adult vehicle does not die, unless the next level has a reason for it to die. And then, like for instance, in a forced crash, in order to give evidence of a next level vehicle to the human kingdom. That would be an example. I don't know if any of the vehicles, well, I suspect at least one of the vehicles would have given that evidence of being an adult vehicle, but I don't know for sure. But like I said, there might be a vehicle in between the kind of vehicle that the Luciferians had and the kind of vehicle that Adam had and the kind of vehicle that new graduates to an adult level might get. And I know for a fact from what Tiendo said that there are more advanced vehicles than the first vehicles that individuals will get when they come into the next level. And there's all different kinds of vehicles too. There's not just humanoid vehicles. Tiendo taught that a vehicle could actually be grown to be a spacecraft. And that the soul body that was graduating to the next level, or had graduated maybe long ago into the next level, could choose to take on the task of being in that department of transportation and everything else that those spacecrafts can be grown to perform. Like make their own clouds, appear and disappear, travel at unbelievable speeds, take samples from the earth, maybe burrow into the earth, maybe be within the oceans, even be so big that they could transfer liquids like ocean water or fresh water from one planet to another. Tiendo gave that example as a task that some members of the next level might do. They might be assigned the task to take water to upcoming civilization on a planet where they were having trouble finding water, and so the next level would just bring them water instead of waiting for them to change the environment to bring water. I don't know how they would deliver the water. Maybe they would do it through a cloud so that it would rain a lot. So because the next level can create clouds, and then they could just drop the water from there if they want to, I guess. I'm just using my own imagination a little bit, but it's not without evidence from things that Tiendo said. So I think I can feel pretty confident that there's some accuracy to it. Just to give you a little bit of overview of that. Anyway, so when they finished their testimony, then the beast, now, what was that? Oh, it's self-saving, I guess. Okay. So the beast is from the Greek word therion, or therion, and it actually means a dangerous animal. Venomous, wild animal. Destroyer, trap, snare, hunter. Now, this beast is actually going to ascend out of the bottomless pit. Now, what does that mean? Well, I'm going to show you that ascend is from the combination of the Greek is from anabaino, in the Greek, and that's put together from ana, as a repetition and or reversal, and the base of 939, which is a basis which has to do with going up, literally or as a figure, arising, ascending up, climbing, go, grow, rise, spring up, come up, on foot. Interesting that it's on foot is on there too. So, so that's what the beast is: ascending, rising up, climbing out, springing up, coming up. I think we can eliminate some of them, but on foot, in other words, they're going to have feet. I think because they're going to take over human vehicles. Because see, what we're talking about are souls that are the Luciferian space aliens, that are the ones that are coming out of the bottomless pit, which it says in the next verse here. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I guess I have to go through this a little bit to, from the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit out of comes from Greek ek, from the deep, by implication the sea, profound, as going down, very early, by foot. I don't know how some of those apply right now. I believe I took it as because of also other usages of that word, because all these interpretations, what translation you're going to choose, shouldn't be. Well, in my opinion, I tried not to. I mean, I didn't try not to, I didn't ever just put down what I thought was the most likely translation by my opinion. I was trying to, I examined the context of how that word was used in other places, throughout Revelations especially, because that's where that word is used. But it's not only through Revelations, because it also goes back into the Old Testament, a lot of these words. And beast as poisonous animal relates to the poisonous part to a snake. And in other places, the Luciferian space aliens are called the dragon. And or actually Lucifer is called the dragon, and that he's got a bunch of associates that are the 7 heads and 10 horns of the dragon, which the beast is also described that way. So the beast actually took on the vibration of the Luciferian space aliens that were shut up in their prison cells in the bottomless pit. In the pit, bottomless, I don't know if that's in particular that important. Although it might have to do with the fact, not the fact, I can't say it's a fact, but with the prospect from some of the records from the Soviets and from Admiral Byrd, his reports of the hollow earth, that and other evidence of woolly mammoth tusks found and bones found that were thought to only live in the Arctic, were found in or maybe they were only found in the Antarctic, but they were found in Russia and Siberia, I believe, something like that. But anyway, I have to, I have to research that a little more to get that perfectly right. But there was a number of things that I read that were indications that there might have been actually some form of pathway actually throughout the whole Earth. The whole Earth might have a certain hollowness to it. The axis might be invisible or energy-based, which we know it is to some degree, but of course we don't know if we can't measure every element because we can't see a certain element, then we have no idea whether it's possible that there could be an element that produces a lot of energy that could be considered a pole that goes from north to south throughout the whole Earth. Anyway, I don't know, I'm getting off track just making that little supposition, but so I should get back onto track because that's not necessary to talk about now, because there's a lot of possibilities, of course. And if you go on YouTube, of course, you can see hundreds of possibilities to everything that I'm talking about now. And I mean, it gets to the point to where, people are just enthralled by the possibilities, and they lose the perspective of how the next level was bringing in the classroom, because it's not such candy to the mouth. I mean, it's candy to the mouth of those that were prepared for it, and then it's sour to the stomach of those because they realize that, because they actually believe this, that the next level isn't just made up of believers. It's made up of doers. And so once they come in touch with Tiendo information, they actually are required to grow. And they don't need to fear that. People don't need to fear that, because the alternative is to basically dwindle away and die without any growth. Or, well, I shouldn't say without any growth, because I don't know. I mean, because Doe said that individuals that haven't even heard of Tiendo could be salvaged from the recycling. So it's up to the next level to decide who deserves to be recycled or not. And but Doe did say that the second group that would be salvaged were those that were separating from the world in their own way, or in the ways of the next level in some ways, but were weak in that separation, had weaknesses in that separation. And so they would also be salvaged from the next level. And the weaknesses come in all forms. It's difficult to separate from the human kingdom. But if we ask the next level to help us, they will help us. And they're not going to, I don't believe they're going to help us in a way that's so traumatic that, it's, if we're asking for it, that it's almost, it's very, very difficult to recover from it. I think I'm kind of an example of that, where I was attached to my partner of 17 years who I fathered a baby with, and she was always a little unsettled with me, and I have to admit I was always a little unsettled with her, and didn't want to marry her. But not because of her, because of I felt in my subconscious mind in my next level mind that still was residing in my soul pocket, that I had been married to Do. Because in the classroom, we had rings at one point, and I'm not going to go into all that detail now. I have talked about it in a previous one of these Revelations broadcasts that I've started to do in the last few months, if you want to see it. And it's in my book. I've talked about it, and that book is freely available on my blog, sawyerhg.wordpress.com. And so I'm not going to go through it now, but I am certain that Do and crew helped me separate from her. It was actually by her instigation, in a sense, but by my instigation as well, because I'm not going to go into the story. But and it was painful, but I already knew at that point that it needed to happen. And I didn't have the strength to instigate it myself, and I didn't also have a good reason to do it. My older member wasn't there standing there calling me and saying, leave everything behind and come follow me. And I already talked to Do about that, and I learned that I could more gradually separate from my humanness for the second time. Because I didn't have those attachments in 1975 when I joined, so I was learning about what it meant to actually separate from those attachments when Do came around. I think it was older souls that, or souls that were just stronger than I was. But that actually did separate from those human vehicles that they were attached to in their families. Anyway, so getting off the track, but still a good place to go, I believe, to understand what we're talking about, because we do have to work up to working for the next level. And like Do said, Do said, the overriding task or is to believe that Do came from the level above human that created all the planets and all the life forms, and believe everything they taught, and that's not necessarily easy to do, because there'll be doubts. But when you hear those doubts, if you want to believe everything they taught, then you're going to actually shut those doubts off and trust that that's the process of washing your brain. It's going to be by your own initiative. There's not going to be anybody that's going to tell you to do it and to what degree to do it and how often to do it. So it becomes your own pace of growth to shut off the past once you feel like you want to leave that behind. And I think every member of the next level must come to that. But when and how, and it comes to each of us to feel that compulsion to do that, is not for me to say. And what I've done is I've put it in the hands of Do to just lead me through it. I want to be putty in their hands, and and I've asked them to help me so that it's not so painful. And maybe that's a little bit wimpy, but it is painful, and Do and crew are very sensitive to that. They know that it's not easy, and that's why it sours the stomach when we get the breath of fresh air, when we get the awakening of recognizing that this is true information, And it tastes so good because it's like, wow, this is real. And this is like beyond belief almost. You know, it's like, you can see how it's beyond belief, but it's true. Like T wrote in the first book that that T and Do were writing, and they called that book, I Can't Believe That, But You Must. I can't believe that, but you must. See, that's the battle of the vehicle. The vehicle saying, I can't believe that. But then the next level mind is coming in saying, but vehicle, you must believe it. Because it's real. Because the next level mind knows it's real. So that's why you're taking over the vehicle. And making it your slave. And brainwashing it. Getting rid of the old and putting in the new. The new is coming from Do's mind, T and Do's mind. And everything they taught that's in the book, that's how and when to enter the kingdom of heaven, the physical kingdom level above human. That's the material, and all the videos that they made, and whatever's in the audio tapes. That the audio tapes, one needs to be careful about what to think is a priority to apply, because just like in the Moses camp, there were a lot of things given that applied for that period of time to those individuals in that classroom specifically. Not that those behaviors and ways could not be adopted. They adopted, like for instance, you know, how you trim your beard and what foods to eat, what not foods to eat, what foods not to eat. You know, which Jesus also talked about, but and updated and said, don't pay attention to what you eat. But T and Do did pay attention to what we ate, because it was an update from even what Jesus was talking about. Partially because, because there needed to be overcome the likes and dislikes, what T and Do called likes and dislikes. That's what needed to be overcome. Food is not an addiction, according to T. So it's not that we have to overcome eating. And pleasure is not something that we have to overcome all pleasure. But we have to be willing to overcome, or to only embrace the pleasures that our older members give us. And I don't know if there's any place that really talks about the pleasures that our older members gave us in the Purple Book, or the book that's the big book. I'm calling my book the Little Book, because even though it's bigger in pages, it's much smaller in content. It's just supplemental, really, to the big book, the mighty book, the great book that Do and crew compiled from everything that T and Do taught over the years since 1975. And so well, even if I have some loose ends left here, I'm going to skip back over to Revelation 11:7 and talk about how that this poisonous animal, beast, now beast is also used in other places in the book of Revelations, and it's from a different Greek word called zoon, Z-O-O-N, and it does not mean the same thing. It actually means a living being, and a living being in the next level would be a member of the next level. And that's evidenced by the context of the way that Zune is used, that these are crew members from the next level that are these 4 living beings. And they actually also lay down their lives. But it's only shown as when they came. But then the number that lay down their lives isn't shown completely anyway. So that's kind of like a moot point, I guess, that it's not shown that the 4 individuals lay down their lives, because it's not shown that the 24 elders. Well, yes, the 24 elders do throw down their crowns in Revelations 4, but I don't want to get into that right now, because I need to round that out a lot in a future broadcast. But I'm pretty sure that the 4 living beings are the more advanced members of the next level, that perhaps even older and more experienced than the 24 elders. So when the 2 witnesses finished their testimony, the time period of delivering prophecy, delivering their updates and their teachings, through the use of their mouth, speaking, that's what prophecy means, this poisonous animal is going to come out of the abyss. Now, does that mean that well, I don't know how much to go into this right now, because Revelation 17 comes into it, but I want to get to the meat of this, the end of this 11:7 before 2 hours have passed. So I'm not going to go into the beast that much, except to prove it, except to say that the space aliens are the poisonous animals, because Tiendo said that they were human equivalents, and a human is an animal, a mammal, according to Tiendo, mammalians. And that's what needs to be overcome, the mammalian kingdom, the mammalian nature. And that's why Jesus said that you can only have one of 2 masters. It's either God, members of the next level, older members of the next level, or mammon. And it's not an accident that the word mammon was used, even though the translation in the Greek is from mammonas, indicates treasure and wealth. But I don't think that's a complete translation, because I believe it also reflects on humanism. So that all humanism actually becomes some people's master. And we see that very clearly by people worshiping the scientists, and worshiping the doctors, and worshiping the religious leaders, and worshiping the intellectuals, and worshiping the artists. And worship, according to Tao, was working for. And yeah, I would extend that to worshiping as if looking up to. And I'm not saying that there's something wrong with looking up to individuals that have acquired knowledge and information and have been able to do some interesting things and fun things and very useful things on the planet. That's all part of the human kingdom. But when it's time to graduate the human kingdom, then that worship needs to shift, until it's totally to the older members of the next level. And that's why it was compared to being in a marriage, to where you only have one spouse, and that is your older member, who is incarnate. But if it's after he's incarnate, you can still form the same relationship by abiding by everything he taught and doing the best you can. And if you slip, trying to recover and ask for help to recover and ask for help to deal with your problems, and talk to him all the time about what's next and how you can grow faster if you want to, or how to work for them, how to be of service more. You're being of service just by wanting to look to your older members, to their will, and by changing your behaviors and ways of the vehicle, you're actually starting to be of service, because by doing that, the result will be that you will be in the next level, and you will have an abundance of service. And service isn't like, servitude. That's that was made into looking like something evil. When servitude is to the next level is like an honor. It's not like an honor, it is an honor, because they are so great. Everything about them is greater than the human kingdom. And it's not until we actually draw in their mind that we actually come to know that. And of course we know it to degrees. If we knew it to the nth degree, then we'd probably be ready to graduate. And Tiendo never held anybody back. So even people now that are hearing this for the first time, I don't know how fast they can grow, but they can grow fast. If they look to the next level, look to Tiendo, specifically to Tiendo. It's not going to work if they think they can talk to Jesus. Because if we're talking to Jesus and ignoring that he came back again in the new vehicle, that older member, then we're not connecting to the same source. It's a different Jesus. It's a false God. It's a false Christian. It's a false Christ. It's a false marturia. Maitreya is the Tibetan Buddhist name for a Christ. And if you look at the characteristics of a Maitreya, if you look that up, like in Wikipedia, you will see a little paragraph. I don't know if it's still there or not. I hope it is. A little paragraph, that's about 2 or 3 sentences, that if you really look at, if you already know the true information about the next level and how it requires the separation from the human kingdom and all the behaviors of the human kingdom, if you look at it with that light, then you can see that it's the same teachings. And that's what also led me to believe that the 2 horns of the little beast were the Pope and the Dalai Lama. Because of how, in Revelation 13, because of how they speak like lamb, and which a lamb is somebody that, a lamb of God would be someone that's a follower of the next level, the true God, the one true God. God's plural only because the kingdom is a many-membered kingdom, and even the least, like Jesus said, was greater than the greatest human, like John the Baptist was to Jesus. And that the least member of the next level was greater than, like I said, John the Baptist, for instance. And which was also saying that John the Baptist was not a member of the next level, except he might have been a student member of the next level, might have had an infant vehicle of the next level even then, or maybe giving his life as he did maybe earned him an infant next level vehicle, just like the other disciples of Jesus did. By telling the truth, knowing that they would be bumped off because of it, and that earning them a crown, which I believe is what I was talking about before, how they threw their crowns down, which I believe would then represent those that sacrificed those vehicles, those student level vehicles, those infant next level vehicles, grown in the next level, in some of the crashes, in the first few crashes, like in the plains of San Augustine, that was called the Roswell crash, and in the Aztec crash, and I believe maybe in the Laredo crash, and maybe the Paradise Valley crash, and the ones that were in the New Mexico area primarily, but maybe also in the Arizona area, and that were about the same time period, 1947, 1948. But actually it might have started even earlier than that. But I don't know, because Tiendo said that there were also facsimile crashes, which I suspect would have been after the next level crashes, because I don't think that the Luciferians imagined that they would crash spacecrafts. I don't know for a fact that that's true, because they might have done it before, and the Luciferians might have been aware of it. So the Luciferians might have staged one before that. So, that's again another supposition on my part that I can't say that Tiendo talked to exactly. So the only reason I'm bringing it up is because there's so many things talked about as possibilities, and it just becomes a ring around the rosy, to where you don't get anywhere, and that's because it doesn't go towards the next level, or go towards the lower forces of the planet. Which Tiendo used that term, that phrase also, to represent all the lower forces. That would include all the discarnates, all the dead humans that have the programming of the Luciferian space alien misinformation mind. Only two sources of mind, from the next level or from the Luciferian space aliens that corrupted the next level mind that they had received. So this beast, these poisonous mammals, these humans, or human equivalents, and human equivalents, that come out of, so the human equivalents are the space aliens that come out of the bottomless pit. Okay, so the humans aren't in the bottomless pit, except to the degree that they're an equivalent of the humans that are on the surface of the planet at the time, in 1940s and 50s. And which Revelations 9:1 talks about the opening of the bottomless pit and what comes out of it, which I'm not going to go into in detail now. But what comes from that bottomless pit, from that ascendance of those space aliens from the bottomless pit, are the secret government that is today mostly in control of the United States from within. You know how many agencies there are that are considered to be intelligence agencies? There's dozens of them. and they're filled with people that are lifelong, members of those agencies, and they're associated with the military, many of them. I mean, there's military intelligence in every branch of the government, of the military, and so that's what's actually running the show. And what we see on the surface is the game, but it's not necessarily just a game, as if it has no significance, as if it's a play, as if it was made up. No, it's humans that are also so influential over the humans in the country and the world that the Luciferian space aliens took an interest to them. And so, and the Luciferian space aliens are not even necessarily, according to Tiendo, they're not necessarily cooperative with each other. And that's why you see a lot of the countries where, they hate each other. Because the Luciferian space aliens go to all the country leaders to try to influence them to their agenda. And what's their agenda? Get off the planet is a big part of the agenda, according to Tiendo. And that's why the Chinese are out in space, and the North Koreans are out in space, and the Indians from India are out in space, and of course the European Union with their European Space Agency, and the NASA agency, and all the private companies, and the Air Force. Just, a spacecraft just came back that was like the shuttle that was in orbit of the planet for many months, during 3 periods of time. And it was self-propelled. I mean, not self-propelled. There were no humans on it. So, something? That idea that those airliners could have been manipulated by remote control might not be far from the truth, considering that we know that technology exists, and to have that space shuttle, a secret mission going on for the last several years, landing and taking off and coming in from, a space orbit, which I didn't know was possible. I don't know how it gets up there, if it has to do it by rockets or not. Maybe it does. Maybe it takes a rocket to put it up there like it did with the space shuttle. But it's a lot smaller, so maybe it has its own ability to have enough rocket fuel, and who knows what kind of engine it has, because it's top secret. So, it might have a nuclear engine of some sort, or an engine that was back engineered from one of the space alien engines. Anyway, so those agencies that, like the CIA, developed in the early 50s. And it was said that it came together as a result of needing to cover up from all the crashes that were happening, and not only the crashes, but the abduction phenomena and the sightings, and all the different kinds of close encounters that were happening. Remember that picture from the White House in 1951, I think it was. The year this vehicle was born, which I don't think that's necessarily significant to that. I doubt it. It shows all those spacecrafts that are hovering right behind the Capitol. But so because of those things and many other things that took place, the secret government formed to cover it up, and they became what they called the Majestic 12, and then who knows what things they did after that to try to mix it all up. You know, they also had the facsimile crashes, according to Tiendo, from the Luciferian space aliens that were trying to mix it up, and were mixing it up, because then, you know, so the government, the secret government especially, has known for a long time. A lot of people have known for a long, long time that the space aliens have been with us on this earth and inside the earth, and so many things take place because of that, and that's where the biggest part of the budget goes to. Not covering it up necessarily anymore, because that's been done pretty thoroughly, but to the advancement of the space race to get off the planet. Of course, the humans are also thinking they want to get off the planet because, let's face it, there have been a lot of near-miss asteroids, and they started in the 1990s, and that's when we first started to see reports about, you know, how the Earth could be decimated by an asteroid. And there was a near-miss asteroid at that time. And then since then, especially from 2013, 14, 15, 16, and 17, there were asteroids that were even within the orbit of the Moon, which is very close. And there's now asteroids that are coming out of nowhere. They've even got they've got all this tracking of asteroids, but then there's all these asteroids that come out of nowhere they can't track. Because who knows? Maybe the next level can shut them off to the telescope and radar detections, or whatever other detection methods the humans have for the asteroids in the asteroid belt. And they're coming out of nowhere, and so far most of them are small. But remember, prophecy says that when the end comes, they're going to have like 90-pound hailstones raining down from the earth, raining down on the earth and on the people of the earth that are left at that time. So, you know, that's actually, that can happen very quickly. And by the next level, I don't think they're into like prolonging the suffering of even the plants, the human plants. They do things, they do it pretty quickly. Like, you know, tornadoes, when they actually kill people, mostly because they didn't want to leave, because the next level gives them notice with the tornadoes, especially. And the same thing with the tsunamis, they get some notice, and earthquakes get their notice. I know I'm repeating things from last broadcast, but the next level seems to give us notice, and they're giving us notice with the asteroids as well, and also telling us that part of the signs would be the roaring seas. So you've got the tsunamis as signs as well. And it's possible that one of the tsunamis in Japan or Sumatra was created actually by an earthquake that was created by an object that went into the sea. I've seen some talk of that. And there was some evidence of that, I believe. But I don't know. So when the humans are seeing all these things happening and knowing that the space aliens are real, so they're willing to do almost anything to get their way. And that's why they instigated and allowed to happen the 9/11 attacks. And then as the first fall of Babylon. And then the second fall of Babylon, I believe, was the financial crisis. That was made to look like, it was a bunch of greedy people, manipulating the market. But the facts were that, you know, on both those occurrences, there was insider trading left and right for both falls, and there was the regulations were relaxed, you know, so that they would have the ability to have some legal grounds for, you know, packaging those mortgages, and you know, that might just been the tip of the iceberg, you know, as giving us a reason for it to happen, so that all the economists could look at it and say, oh yeah, it was that, when they were really trying to wash money, wash funds into their black budget programs that they didn't want to have to get, you know, Senate approval for, congressional approval for. But so basically those humans also became poisonous humans, poisonous mammals, because they ended up taking on the mind of the space aliens, even if it's just fear, but wanting to fight them, and fight them with the weapons, and, you know, all the things that came about because of the Luciferian space aliens' presence, that wanted to build the wars, that wanted the wars to escalate, because they knew that the wars, by escalating, would, in my opinion, result in the building of technology and more money going towards that and coming away from the people. Because for every war, there was a boom in the economy. Of course, for the losing party, that became, you know, a fall as well, but that, you know, some of them actually survived from, like all the scientists, you know, that the Russians and the United States divided. And who knows how many U-boats that were said to be disappeared might have made it to Antarctica, to a base there, or to Argentina. I mean, there was evidence that a number of German military made it to Argentina and were there for quite a while, and probably are still there. Which, you know, you can say everything is, you know, that's conspiracy theory. That's just the keywords that are given to cover it up, so people won't look at it anymore, because, you know, don't want to look too hard at things, because they might start to add up the column of all these things, which anybody in their right mind, I think, can do now more and more, and that's increasing by watching their behaviors, and as they fight, you know, among the warring parties of within the, you know, the Democrats and the Republicans fighting, and the intelligence community fighting among themselves in some degrees, and who knows what, you know, what fighting goes on between generals, and, you know, that they want to do things a certain way, and others want to do it this way, and you know, so they've got that. That's throughout the whole system, because the whole system doesn't work, and it wasn't designed to work by the next level, because they included the Luciferian space aliens in that plan, and they knew that the Luciferian space aliens weren't after making the human kingdom work, although Tiendo said that the space aliens do like order. They don't want people just running around killing everybody, killing each other, you know, so they have a police force, and they have, you know, so that's the order that the Luciferians put on it. Because the next level wouldn't, well, at this time and place, with the lesson plan the way it is, they wouldn't, you know, hire people to have guns and to kill other people that had guns, and, you know, to go back and forth like that. Because the next level doesn't, Tiendo said that it's a primitive society that develops weapons to kill humans with. For humans to create weapons to to kill other humans with. And that there's more there's a number of ways to control a violent person rather than to kill them. And they didn't elaborate that I recall. But we can use our imaginations to see some of the ways. But anyway, I'm not going to go there any further. But but how does this beast, these security agencies, and related government, because the government came from the security agencies, is all part of it. It's the same thing, you know. It all trickles up or trickles down, however you want to look at it. Because the security agencies don't want to be on the forefront. They don't want to be in the public eye, because that's what they can keep things secret better that way, and they can do their own thing better. So but how did that government actually, as it says, make war or battle against the two witnesses, as it says here? And that word war is actually from the Greek polemos, to bustle, battle, fight, against. So they fight against the two witnesses. How do they do that? Well, through the mouthpiece of the beast, which is the media. And the media is, as we all know, we should know now, the corporate media, and the corporations are, for the most part, the biggest ones, the Fortune 500 or whatever, are in bed with the government. You know, and the agencies, and the whole money system, and the bankers, and they're all together, and the institutions, and the universities, and they're all like working as like one unit in a lot of ways, to make money, to have profits, to have power, to have influence, to be able to hire people to to build their underground cities, so that the rich can go down there when they see you know, a big asteroid is coming close. They can all run down there and, you know, and hide in their underground bunkers that are, you know, developing more and more. And they can have more and more money for that, as well as for the space program, and as well as for the weapons program, to try to shoot the asteroids, or blow them up, or divert them into a different direction, which has been talked about legitimately by departments of the government. So these things, I don't have to make up these things and just have opinions about them. All these things are actually more and more evident now, even in the mainstream. Like Jesus said, all things would be known. Or maybe that was Daniel who said that. I think it was Daniel that said knowledge would be increased. But Jesus said all things would be known. That's right, he did. Anyway, so I'm going to skip on. So they make war with the media against the two witnesses, against T and Do. And, oh, look at that, I got a typo right there. Darn. So they battle against them, they fight against them, the media fights against them. which I'll talk about how that actually transpired. And, which is the word, can also be also or even or so then. Most of the time I leave it as and. And shall, and that's from a futuristic translation of nikao, nikao, from Nike, which is interesting that it actually is the future tense, and so it means to subdue, suppress, restrain, hold back. So overcome, to me, isn't the best word for that situation. But of course, the translators didn't know that at the time, so I don't find any fault with them. But knowing what I know from the experience with Tiendo and their history, I know that they were not overcome. They continued. In fact, I'm saying that the battle that was in the media actually happened in October of 1975, started. And Walter Cronkite from the CBS Evening News went on the air nationally and said that a number of people, 20-something people, left Oregon, Walport, Oregon, and were said to have gone to Fruita, Colorado, where they were going to rendezvous with a UFO, be picked up by a UFO, and that the meeting was given by two individuals, two mysterious individuals, and they don't know who they are or where they came from, and they don't know anything about any of that. But that the basis of this was, which I've talked about before, I'm not going to go through it now, was the way that Tiendo's meeting went to the press because of the children that were left behind by two members that joined for a short period of time, whose children were sent to live with the dad, who was about an hour away from where these two individuals lived at the time when they wanted to join with Tiendo. And that ended up getting to the police, because the woman that I was a partner with at the time, her sister, ended up going to the police because of knowing that the woman and myself were going to join with Tiendo, and she was freaking out by it, and so she wanted to stop us, and she knew that Ron and Judy were going to be giving away their children. She didn't know what the arrangement was for those children. They weren't going to just be abandoned on the street or be with somebody that didn't care for them. But she didn't know that, but she went to the police, and then the police came and investigated, and I talked to them and told them that there was no abandonment happening, because I was actually at their house at the time when the police came with the sister of the woman that was my partner, and who also joined and left the group in 1987. But anyway, so when that all happened, then that of course went to the press, and that started the investigation of who these individuals were that gave this meeting, and what UFOs had to do with it, and where those individuals left. That ended up being 34 individuals according to Doe, and he would know because those individuals all met up at the same place in Grand Junction at the Colorado National Monument. That's where I met with T&O for the first time. Anyway, so for a couple of weeks, that story was being broadcast all over the nation, and potentially overseas as well, and all over the United States. And so it got to the place to where the investigation continued, and they figured out that the two individuals, they got their names, and that they were from Texas, and they were Marshall Herb Applewhite and Bonnie Lou Truesdale Nettles. And so as a result of finding out their names and their history, they found out that though Marshall Herb Applewhite, or actually at the time he was using the name Herf, I believe, and his middle name, because he never used that before. I just realized that he never used that word before. I don't think. Well, I don't know that for a fact, so I shouldn't say that. But I said it for a reason. But I can't bring any proof to that, so I shouldn't go there. To stay better on the track of what T&O said and did, and what these prophecies seem to mean. And so they found out that he had a record. He was a felon, and I talked about that before. The bottom line was that he had used one of his credit cards while he was Marshall Herb Applewhite to rent a car when they had nothing and their car broke down. And according to them, it was the first time they used those credit cards. And they also used another credit card that was given to them by their first student to use for gasoline, but then the husband found out about it and reported it stolen. So both were arrested, but charges were dropped on both of them. But the district attorney, and when they got the car back, the rental car back, because T&O were sending notes back to the rental car company saying that they were taking good care of the car and that they would pay for it, and then they were hoping that the next level would give them a way to pay for it. And they admitted that they decided that was a mistake they made. However, it kind of made Doe into a thief in the night, didn't it? For a more literal interpretation of that, even though he wasn't really a thief. The night had to do, but that really had to do with the catching away of the souls that were human souls, not human souls, but because a soul can't be a human soul. A soul comes from the next level. It's a deposit. It's a pocket, a pillowcase. It's an object that's got a subtle physicality to it. That's compared to the wind, according to Jesus, and that's what is born into the next level. That's what the soul, spirit, mind, birth is, which is it's basically going through its chrysalis stage in the cocoon. In the human body is the chrysalis that needs to be overcome, the Christing process, in order to grow that soul inside that body and outside that body. The soul actually extends to be more than the shape of the body. I don't know if it extends throughout the whole body greater than the body, because I didn't get that detail that I read. So I'm saying the things that Doe didn't say as I go, because I want it to be clear. And also show how these interpretations that I'm putting out aren't just my opinion without evidence from T&O and other prophecies and other things Jesus said and Moses said and many of the Old Testament prophets said. Anyway, so because I have no interest in having my ideas beyond what I'm doing now be accurate. I hope they have enough accuracy. That's all I hope for, that these interpretations are accurate enough to where Tiendo will be pleased with the effort, and will be useful for people to consider and see for themselves, so that they can come closer to becoming students of Tiendo. Anyway, so, because that didn't end with their departure, or they would have said that the window was closed. They said a window is still open. They said a brief period of time, but brief to the next level can be years. An hour in the next level is 40 years on Earth in comparison, even though they don't have hours and time in the next level. Tiendo said that they'd go by events as their time frame. Events in the heavens or wherever, I guess. Events that they're putting on, they're doing, and they're accomplishing. Shape their time frame. Because they don't die, so they don't, they just have a different, it's just different in that regard. And anyway, so even though the felony conviction was dropped, the prosecution was dropped by, the charge was dropped by the rental car company, and the prosecutor took it up, it took 6 months, those in jail, before they finally made a deal to where they offered Doe a plea. And they said, plead guilty, and you'll probably get time served, because of a 4-month sentence for that offense, according to his lawyer. And he said the other option is to go to a jury trial, and then you don't know what's going to happen. And so Doe had just finished writing Statement 1 when he was in jail. And so he said that there was some in jail that there was one person in particular that watched over him and kept him away, kept trouble away from him. And I bet you that individual was pleasing to the next level. And anyway, but because there were, he did have people that were, kind of like looking after him, not looking after him, but after him. He had people that were looking after him also to try to help him. So anyway, so Doe accepted the plea and got off for time served, and kind of lost my train of thought there. I'm getting tired, but because of that, that's why he was accused of being. That's why he had a felon on his record. He was a felon, and so when they found out that, they felt like these weren't two people from space, or it was a felon, and they were both arrested at one point, and he was a car thief, and so he was a hooligan. And so when Walter Cronkite went back on the air, national news, and he said, we found out who they are, and here's their names, and this is what they did, and he was a felon, and so the mystery is solved. And so in Tiendo at that time, when that came out, they were in Las Vegas in a hotel. They weren't necessarily playing roulette wheel. Though they might have tried it to see if the next level would give them a win that they could use, money for to keep their ministry going or whatever. Because they actually had us going on an outing to Las Vegas when we lived in Las Vegas for a short period of time. And we went to the casino, and they gave us each like $1 or so, and we played the slots. and that was it. And I don't think anybody won anything significant. But Tiendo weren't abiding by human morality and human ethics. Of course, not killing other humans is next level morality, next level instructions. And not stealing from people is the next level instruction. But to steal from somebody means you have to take something from them and not give it back. So, which Tiendo didn't do. Although it was a little bit like that, of course, because they had the car and they knew that it was supposed to be returned. But they were so filled with the mind of the next level coming into them and their task that they were kind of blinded from that. And it's very, very possible that the next level older members that were overseeing that might have even been T, because T didn't need all her mind to operate the human vehicle that was called T, might have wanted them to ignore that returnee of the rental car in order to fulfill that prophecy, and also to give reason for them to be condemned by the media and other people and seen as criminals. And because of the way that would put people to the test. Because the next level are about testing us. And that if we pass the tests, then we stick with them. But if we don't pass the test, we're either not ready and we get a future opportunity for a test, like I feel like I have, and like Tiendo said the Luciferians had, and so I think all the dropouts have. So that every time there's an opportunity to gravitate more towards Tiendo and their truth, that's another test for all the dropouts and everybody else. That's everybody else that dropped out or thought negative things about them or whatever their degree of growth was in relationship to them, which there could be many thousands of, maybe 144,000 souls that were looking for vehicles, human vehicles. So there could be 144,000 human vehicles that could respond positive in the next few years to Tiendo. Anyway, so that's what happened then. So what Tiendo then felt after 3 days in Las Vegas, they felt subdued. They felt actually, what was the word they used? That there was no sense in continuing with the mission. That the mission was dead, I think was their words. And that there was no point in continuing because everybody had made up their minds about how silly this all was, and so they felt to give up. I mean, I don't know how far they took it, but well, I know they didn't take it very far because by the third day, they felt like they got instructions from the next level to continue on. and that they felt like the mission, that they were shot down by the press, so that the demonstration might not happen. They didn't know that it would happen or not. But the demonstration that they talked about, which they thought was surviving being killed and then ascending in front of everybody's eyes, which could have happened that way. If the students were ready to graduate the next level, into the next level at that point, and the next level wanted to have that happen that way, then that's the way it would have happened. But the choices of the humans, that is also the choices of the souls working through the human student vehicles. That's what dictate what the next level is going to do with each step. And so they wrote that prophecy, that forecast of how this was going to go, in such a way that it could be fulfilled in different ways. And so, knowing that they felt like they were, at first I didn't recognize that this word subdue was really there. I mean, I just overlooked it all the time. I would say, it says here, where's that word? Overcome. I would see that word overcome, and I just go over it, and I go right over to kill themselves. Well, that's the point. That autos also, and notice how they said to subdue, suppress, restrain, hold back. Themselves here is an equal translation, which I can show you over here. War against themselves. Which the reason I'm saying it that way, auto is also yourselves, theirs, themselves. So, of course, because of the way they laid down their lives in 1997, by their own volition, I was looking at that word auto and looking at the fact that that word was added at the end of each of these statements. They were war against them or themselves, and overcome themselves or subdue themselves, and then kill themselves, which kill is from apokteino, which actually means, the apo part means, when it's in a combination, when it's in composition, it usually denotes separation, departure, cessation, completion, reversal. And that's what it is. It's in a composition in the use of this word. So why they just translated it to kill by itself doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless they were blinded, the translators, because most every translation says kill that I've seen. I've seen a number of them. I've seen dozens of them. And so, I believe that apokteino auto is indicating that one of the ways to translate this is separate from their humanness, separate from the human kingdom by dying themselves, by killing their vehicles, which is really not killing, because it's killing anyway. Now remember that laying down your body was something that Jesus taught, was part of the overcoming process, part of the Christing. That's why he did it. He didn't do it just for the heck of it. He did it because it was his Father's instruction, his Heavenly Father's instruction, that he received by two individuals coming to him on the Transfiguration Mount and telling him, this is the way you were going to go, and this is the time to do it now. And that's when he, I don't know if he left Jerusalem then and then came back, because that's what it says. He came back for his burial, for his, to give himself, turn himself in, because otherwise he knew how to hide really well. So he could have stayed hidden, or he could have left and went someplace else where they weren't going to try to kill him. But so he was laying down his life. He was committing suicide in the context of knowingly seeing to it that his body would be killed by these other people, because he knew they hated him and wanted to kill him. Many times they tried to stone him and kill him, and they talked about wanting to get rid of him. The chief priests and the Sanhedrin of the Jewish community there. So they actually were the instigators, and then they were afraid to do it themselves, so they, because they knew the people were considering, a lot of the people were considering that Jesus was a prophet. And so they didn't want to, kill Jesus and then have all these people against them. So they arranged for it to be a setup to where then they could get the Romans to do it. And that's what became the Roman Catholic Church. The souls and spirits and Luciferian space aliens that were behind that whole setup. But Jesus said, no man, he said about his laying down his body, no man taketh it from me. I lay it down. My Father gives me the right to lay it down and take it up again, because I'm going to the Father. That's the reason why he had the right to do it, was because he was going to the Father. And the reason why Doe and the crew had the right to do that, when otherwise they wouldn't have had the right to do that, was because they were going to T. And they were going to be with Doe. And they were of one mind with Doe. And they knew that they were not those vehicles anymore. They had seen enough evidence of that. And there was a lot of evidence. There's a lot of evidence that proved to me that I was not this vehicle. Although I lost some of that. But I know I'm not this vehicle, speaking now. Because this vehicle wouldn't be doing this. Because I don't get anything out of it on a human level. I don't make money. I don't get power because I don't have followers, even though some people think I have followers. I just have people that read my blog and watch some of these videos. But I tell them all that the connection they need to make is with Doe. He's still alive, very much so, even more so than he was when he was in his vehicle, because the human vehicle is only temporary. They only borrow the human vehicles because they own them all, so they have the right to borrow them and do whatever they want with them. But they treat them well when they're incarnate, because they want them to last. And that's why we had all these health programs. But also, it left a record of how you could follow his mind by adopting the remedies that he gave in the book, The Transfiguration Diet. that ended up being sold to Dr. Christopher's son. And he reprinted it. And it's available, and you can buy it online. I don't know from where, maybe from a rare book place or whatever. But, so, now, even like war against them could have been bottomless pit to make, abide, agree, appoint, avenge. Avenge. You know, the Luciferian space aliens want to avenge. They have a vengeance against the next level for locking them in the bottomless pit for thousands of years, and for imprisoning them on Earth. You know, band together. The band together as to bear, berai, bring forth, cast out, and that goes back to Revelations 12, where it says that the flood would be cast out by the Luciferians against T, and that was an application of T with her son, Do, and the student body in that context in Revelation 12. Because they were all one unit at that point. They were one family at that point. And then the cast out the flood. And the flood was all the negative thinking about them that the Luciferians were stimulating, and especially in the families and that were left behind, that became what actually burned out, according to Do, T's vehicle. So the war was against their selves, and the self, of course, in this context, would be their minds, their human vehicles, because that's what they would see. That's what humans would see. They wouldn't see them as the souls, and overcome themselves, or subdue themselves. In a sense, T and Do subdued themselves by keeping that car too long and getting that record, that felon record on Do's record, on the Marshall Applewhite record. So in a sense, they then were the instigators of their own being subdued. And then we know what happened. Now, when you see the word "and," of course, that can be a long time in between. This wasn't. But notice it was "shall overcome." Okay, so, but you know, it's said in a way that it can be taken in different ways. You know, so "and" doesn't have to be "and," but it can be "and also." It can, it can be all these words, and with the next level of prophecy, a number of those words would work. Let me see if there's anything else here that I want to cover, but I think I've made this long enough, and I'm sure there's going to be more things that I'm going to think that I should have covered better or differently, but I think I've had enough for now. So good night, and I am thankful that T and Do are still allowing us to have the time to grow closer to them. It's a blessing. Every moment is a blessing that we have to grow closer to them.